My dear students, welcome you all to the botany classes. In today's class, we shall discuss about the principle of classification of living organisms, mainly the angiosperms, what we call the flowering plants. Okay, and before moving on to the classification systems, we have to remember one of the great botanists or taxonomists who has made a great contribution in the field of taxonomy, mainly in the field of binomial nomenclature, that is Carolus Linnaeus. Okay. Here classification is a system of naming objects or entities by common characteristics. Simply the similar or common characteristics will be considered. Here the organisms may be similar in structure, function or the evolutionary history. Based on that, the organisms can be classified. Okay. It is a process of establishing, defining and ranking taxa within a hierarchical series of groups, right. Not surprisingly, biologists classify organisms into different categories, mostly by judging degrees of apparent similarity and difference that they can see. Simply similarity and differences will make the base of a classification. It may be physical similarity or the biological relationship. Okay. It says that greater the degree of physical similarity, the closer the biological relationship. If physically they are close, then biologically they will be similar or close, right. Second point, to discover unknown organisms, taxonomists do the following. Means for discovering, for identifying, they have followed many of the following steps. First one, they begin their classification by looking for the anatomical features that appear to have the same function as those found on other species. Means they look at the functional similarities simply. Second point, they determine whether or not the similarities are due to an independent evolutionary development or to descent from a common ancestry. Means the similarity may be because of the evolution or because of the common ancestor, right. If the latter is the case, if the second is the case, then the two species are probably closer related and should be classified into the same or nearby biological categories, right. And the natural selection and other processes have led to the staggering diversity of organisms, right. Lastly, biologists have discovered, identified and named about 1.5 million species so far, and 2 to 100 million additional species are yet to be discovered. Means only few species of plant have discovered, but many of them are yet to be discovered on this earth. Here, why one has to classify the living organisms, why one has to classify the plants. Okay. Looking at the taxonomy term, it comes from Greek. Taxis means arrangement and nomy means science of, means arrangement of the organisms, plants. Classification of organisms into different categories based on their physical characteristics and presumed natural relationship, means their morphological characters and their adjustment with the nature, adjustment with the ecosystem will make the basis of a classification. And more. Also they will classify the organisms, plants into various groups just to avoid the confusion and for the study purpose. Okay. Looking at the importance of the classification, it makes the study of such a wide variety of organisms easy, means the study becomes easy. It projects before us a good picture of all life forms at a glance. means by looking at the classification system we can see all the organisms in front of us. It helps us understand the interrelationship among different groups of organisms, and it serves as base for the development of other biological sciences such as biography, etc. And various fields of applied biology such as agriculture, public health and environmental biological depends on classification of pests, disease vectors, pathogens and components of an ecosystem. Here the classification is important because it helps scientists to clearly identify species and to study, observe them and recognize, organize concentrated conservation efforts. Means classification helps to identify, to study, to observe them, to organize them and to conserve them or to protect them. Lastly, it also assists as a way of remembering and differentiating the types of organisms, making predictions about organisms of the same type, classifying the relationship between different organisms and providing precise names for the organisms. These are the basic ways or aims of classification. Let us now understand the systems of plant classification. There are mainly three types of systems of plant classification. Firstly, artificial system of classification, secondly, natural system of classification, thirdly, phylogenetic system of classification. Okay. So, we shall see one by one with the details. Okay. Artificial system of classification. It is the earliest systems of plant classification. Example, systems of Theophrastus, Dioscorides, etc. It remained dominant from 300 BC up to about 1830, but it was based on one or a few easily observable characters of plants such as habit like trees, shrubs, herbs, etc. or floral characters, particularly the number of stamens and carpels. Okay. Such types of classification using some of the arbitrary or at least easily observable characters, often irrespective of their affinity, is called artificial. Here it is also called sexual system because it has focused mainly on the sex organs of the flower, that too on the male reproductive part, that is androecium. And the sexual system of Linnaeus is a good example of artificial classification, which uses only one attribute, that is the number of stamens, for grouping plants into 24 classes, as a result of which various unrelated taxa, which are not at all related but similar in one respect only, they have been placed under the same class. Since the system has focused mainly on one character, mainly on the one sexual character, the artificial system is also called a sexual system of classification. It is proposed by Carolus Linnaeus. Okay. Next one, natural system of classification. Here these systems of classification are based upon several overall resemblances. Overall resemble means the superficial characteristics, mostly in gross morphology, thus utilizing as many taxonomic characteristics as possible to group taxa. Means it has covered many of the characters. It has covered many of the characters so that there will not be any much confusion during the classification. Here examples like classification proposed by John Ray and most commonly Bentham and Hooker, etc. were based on natural principles of plant classification. In India, we usually refer Bentham and Hooker systems of classification for the study of the plant groups. Lastly, phylogenetic system of classification. It is mainly based on the evolutionary relationship. It started in 1859 following the publication of Origin of Species by Charles Darwin, and they used as many taxonomic characters as possible in addition to the phylogenetic evolutionary interpretations. Means they have considered many of the possible phylogenetic or evolutionary characteristics, and these are expressed in the form of phylogenetic trees or shrubs showing a presumed evolution of the groups. Means the evolution of one species into many species are shown in the form of a phylogenetic tree or evolutionary tree. And here the classification proposed by Hutchinson, Taxonomy, etc. were based on phylogenetic principles of plant classification. Okay. So, here briefly the natural systems are two dimensional, that is based on data available at any time and is known as a horizontal classification. Means natural systems are known as a horizontal classification systems, whereas the addition of third dimension, that is past history or ancestral history, results in a phylogenetic classification, also known as a vertical classification or evolutionary classification. So, guys, this is all about the classification systems of organisms. We shall discuss the further concepts in the next class. Till that, keep learning. Take care. Bye bye.